Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to Monday, December 15th, council meeting. What a crowd. You gotta love it. We'll call this meeting to order. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll start with a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Now we can all rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Reed. Brown.
Here.
Wheaton.
Here.
Kraus.
Here.
French.
Here.
And Mayor Domingo.
Here, thank you. Mayor and council members' comments. Are there any comments this evening, please? See none. I have just a couple. Leaf pickup is over. If you have any leaves left, please put them in plastic bags and set them on the curb. If you put them out in the street, they won't get picked up. Your neighbors will probably be mad at you because the first time it snows, they're gonna get them. So if you put them in bags, they will continue to pick them up. Thank you very much. And I'm going to say it now because probably by the end of the meeting I'll forget. I want everybody to have happy holidays and New Year's, and please be safe and enjoy your time off and enjoy this weather while it lasts. We'll move on to the public hearing, and I'm going to hold off on opening the public hearing until after Peggy and Sam and them all do their thing with their presentation on the brownfield plan for the city of Albion. So you guys are on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Peggy Sant. I'm president of the Albion Economic Development Corporation. And I'm here to talk to you tonight about a project that we've all been kind of waiting for. I'll try it that way. Is that any better?
Yep.
Okay. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about redevelopment projects and state incentives and local incentives and how those things work, first of all. So you get somebody who's interested in doing a redevelopment project, and they put together all the numbers for the project, they plan their, whatever it is they're going to do, and they figure out what the budget's going to be, and maybe everything's wonderful. Maybe, however, there's a gap between what is financially supportable to do and what the cost of the project's going to be. And we've seen that even in just housing in the community. We have so much housing in the community that is very affordable that it's hard to make money if you're a housing developer and to build new houses because they're just, it's hard to sell them. So with commercial projects, the state has a very strong interest in having those things happen, and so they have developed a large bucket full of different kinds of incentives that are designed to help developers make the money work on a project so that they can go ahead and do a project. When it comes to commercial stuff, they are very interested in downtown. MEDC is focused on downtown projects right now and has been for several years. And so they're very supportive if it's the right thing. And the first thing that tells them whether something's the right thing or not is whether the community supports it. In a case like the one we're going to talk about tonight, because we have some property that has some either contaminated sites or is just completely obsolete, either is vacant or the buildings are in such poor condition that they really aren't usable anymore. The first thing you look at is a brownfield plan for that area. So you define the area of the project, the footprint of where this development is going to occur, and then you develop something called a brownfield plan, which in essence, and I'm going to just give you a real quick piece of that because we have somebody here who can talk about it a lot better than I can. But the idea is that with a brownfield plan, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, which is administered by the EDC, has the opportunity to say, okay, we like this project, state of Michigan, and we like this project developer, and we want to support it. And we're willing to contribute to the cause whatever taxes we are able to collect in that area as your project goes forward, and we will throw them back into the pot as we collect them from you as the project pays taxes over the years until we've been able to reimburse to you, developer, the monies that you spent on certain things that are allowed by statute. The DDA, because this is in a downtown development district, has a similar thing. They're allowed to contribute their tax money too. And so we have been before the Brownfield Authority Board. Brownfield Authority Board, as you can see from the plan that you have in front of you, has already approved this document. The Downtown Development Authority has agreed that they will contribute their dollars to this project, and they've signed what's called an interlocal agreement with the Brownfield Authority, which in essence passes their tax capture from the project out of the future to the Brownfield Authority, and then we administer that, paying back over time some of these costs. A key thing you need to know, and that the public needs to know, is that in a project like this, the state won't do anything to support a project unless it has evidence of local support. They want to know that the community likes the project and is willing to get some skin in the game, basically. So in a case like this, where there is brownfield activity, that local support, one of the ways that will be shown is through a brownfield plan and the willingness to use future tax dollars to help support the development. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is that we do have a historic commercial district downtown, and a lot of these buildings are beautiful old buildings. They're mostly in very rough shape, but they're still beautiful old buildings. And it's a tribute to those old buildings that the current developer is interested in doing some work here because he really likes the character of our downtown. And he is accustomed to working in historic areas and historic buildings, has actually done historic renovations in the past and will be doing some in the future. And he's not at all interested in destroying the character of our downtown. He wants to put up a project that will be very consistent with the flavor and the feel of downtown, turn of the last century Albion. And so while we may have to have some buildings demolished because a couple of them are in really, really rough shape, we're waiting for structural engineer reports. If that happens, it's not because anybody is opposed to historic. It's just that at some point it just isn't economically feasible to do a renovation. You have to start over, and we may be with that in that case with this project. So that's the short story. Again, the Brownfield Authority Board, which is also the EDC Board, is 100% in support of this. Took action in November at its board meeting to support the Brownfield Plan and to agree to enter into the interlocal agreement with the DDA if they agreed to do that too. And so I'm bringing this project to you. You know, and I think perhaps the public knows, but this is a project that will take place in what some have referred to as the Porter Square area. The city and the ABA have been acquiring property in that area for well over a decade in hopes that some sort of a redevelopment project would occur in that area. So this is well within the long-range planning that the city has demonstrated in the past with dollars and with commitment. And I feel that this is a really, really good project for the community. For those who don't know, the Porter Square project area is from Superior to Clinton and from Center to Porter. And there are 2 buildings and 1 vacant lot, which are not part of the Brownfield plan, but the rest of that square block is included here. And as you know, it's a hotel project proposed. And I need to emphasize this is a proposed project because without the incentives that we can provide through this tool and through a couple of others, and without the state's money, this project won't happen. So your approval tonight is critical to the success of this project. So with that, I'm going to introduce first Mr. Brett Stuntz. He is with AKT Peerless. He is an environmental consultant with the developer, and he will tell you more about the plan itself and about how they work and can answer your technical questions that I could only make a good stab at but might not be able to get right. So please.
Thank Thank you very much. My name is Brett Stuntz. I'm with AKT Peerless. I am an environmental consultant. Also, most of my full-time job is as a brownfield consultant, so I specialize in working on sites like this. I'd like to spend about 5 minutes talking about the project, the site, and the brownfield process in general, since it's an infrequent process probably for most communities that I work in to go through. As Peggy mentioned, this is styled as the downtown Albion hotel project. It's a very exciting project because there's really nothing like it in town currently. It's really transformative in the sense that it will be a boutique hotel, 3 stories tall is the plan for the project, with a restaurant and ballroom conference facilities as well. So approximately 67,000 square feet on a block where there really is very little right now. There are 13 parcels on the block right now, 3 buildings, they're in poor shape, most of it's vacant. There's very, very, very little taxes that are actually generated by the property currently. About, I think 9 of the parcels are publicly owned and 2 are occupied by a nonprofit. This would be a $9.2 million investment in this property, and it would also create jobs to support the hotel, jobs to support the restaurant and conference facilities. So it would be a big change, and it would also bring people who are staying in the hotel downtown to support Albion businesses year-round. The developer in this is, the main developer is SSP Associates, and my company has worked with SSP for about 20 years, and I've really never seen a developer that can go to troubled sites like SSP has and successfully, in a cost-efficient way and quickly and with a high quality, redevelop difficult sites. Most of the sites, if not all the sites that we've worked on with them, are brownfield sites. They're tough from a construction standpoint and they're tough from a financing standpoint, but SSP has a uniformly successful track record of redeveloping these sites. And Peggy was talking about the difficulty in working in downtown where there's a strong need for attention to historic construction on buildings that's already there. We just worked with on a project with them in downtown Midland where the buildings that were on this site, and it's right in the heart of downtown Midland, there were trees growing out of them. There was nothing you could do with it, but in its place, they're constructing a building that really enhances the architectural character of the neighborhood. And that's what they've done over and over and over again. So this site, it's 13 parcels. There are 2 alleys running through the property. They need to be brought together, unified. We've not done environmental investigations on all of them, but at least 3 of them are contaminated, 8 are blighted. It's a traditional brownfield redevelopment. We would expect there to be geotechnical concerns in the ground, which would make any kind of expansion more difficult and more costly. The brownfield process, as Peggy mentioned, it's not an upfront financing process. So although there's a gap, a construction financing gap in this project, the brownfield process, which is what's in front of you today, doesn't close that gap. But what it does is 2 things. It provides longer-term financial stability to a project by reducing the tax burden on the project for some number of years going forward. That lets the project get up and running and be able to operate without heightened risk of failure. The other thing it does, which is really more important in this particular case, is it's the threshold issue that has to be addressed in order to go to the state and seek additional assistance to actually close that gap. It's a $9.2 million project, and we're looking at slightly over a $2 million construction financing gap. The state does have tools to address this gap and close the gap. They can, through grant and loan, through a couple of different programs, come in and close that gap. But again, as a threshold issue, they expect a local commitment through the brownfield process. But the brownfield process not only is a local commitment in terms of local taxes, but it also allows you to leverage state school taxes and bring those into this project. It doesn't take away from the local schools. It has no effect on the schools in Albion, but it does allow an additional revenue stream to come in during the operational phase of the project and help support it. So the way the general process works is, in any brownfield site, there are categories of eligible activities. So if you look at your construction budget, your environmental costs, your site preparation costs, your demolition costs, your infrastructure improvement costs, those are all brownfield eligible activities under Michigan law. And so although those are costs that the developer has to incur, has to pay for upfront, they go into a hypothetical pot, and if you add up, whatever those numbers are, in this particular project, they're slightly over $1 million. It's about 15% of the project. And then when the project is completed, the property will be reassessed and the taxes go up significantly higher. The current taxable value of the property is about $40,000. We are projecting the post-redevelopment taxable value of the property to be about $2.5 million. And so if you have a base of taxes here and then an increase of taxes here, the base stays the same, that keeps flowing to the taxing jurisdictions, but a chunk of the increase, not the whole increase, because some of the things like debt millages still have to go back to the city, but a chunk of the increase can be used to pay down that pot over some number of years. In this case, our projection for the developer reimbursement of this project is 8 years. So the developer pays for the project, we get state money to come in and help close that financing gap, complete the project, and then with the increased taxes that the developer pays, some chunk of that increase comes back to reimburse those brownfield eligible activities. And once all reimbursement and local site fund deposits are made, then it's business as usual and the taxes flow to the taxing jurisdictions. So again, it brings stability to the project, but it's this threshold issue that we need to address if we want the state to come on board and support this project. And as Peggy mentioned, this is a process, we're in a fairly early phase of the process, but we're pushing as hard as we can so that we can go to the state and approach them and say, here's the situation. Albion, the city of Albion has stepped up with a brownfield plan. We've done what you asked. Now come and help us close this gap. And we've already had initial conversations with them. They like the project a lot. They're very supportive of the project, and they're trying to find a way within their priorities and their appropriations to come in and support this project. So before you today is the resolution approving the brownfield plan, and we respectfully request your support in this. And I'm more than happy to take any questions if you have them.
Yes.
I've had citizens come to me with two questions. One question, taxes concerning the Albion District Library and other entities of such over the 30-year period. How will that affect them?
The current taxes that are received as a result of taxation on the property won't be affected at all because there's an initial taxable value that's set. And everything that's assessed under that initial taxable value, nothing changes. The increase in taxes associated with the redevelopment of the property, that during the reimbursement period for the eligible activities goes to reimbursement for the developer. So the taxing jurisdictions won't see any decrease, but they won't see substantial increase until the reimbursement is complete. In this case, we're projecting approximately 8 years before they go from the current level to the spike, based on the 2.5 million. In my experience, as brownfield redevelopments go, that's very quick. The maximum allowed period under Michigan law is 30 years. It's odd to see one under 10 years, 15 years.
You definitely did your homework. The second question, the facades. Some of the residents were asking me about, will it have the sort of the original flavor? Will the facade reflect downtown Albion?
Yeah, and Dr. Shaheen is here. He could probably speak to that better than I can. But I know that even this far, there's been a tremendous effort to work, at the very least, retain the flavor, the historic character. I know that Albion is very important to Dr. Sheen. He has a long history here and wants to be a good citizen and do everything he can to make it consistent and enhance the historic character of the neighborhood that exists currently.
Well, I totally support you.
Thank you.
So next, I'd like to introduce to you the developer. I want to tell you just a little bit about him and about his interest in the historic character, since you brought that up, and a couple of other things. First of all, he is an Albion College grad. That's how he became aware of Albion and our downtown, and became interested in the community as a whole. He and I have talked since we first met about how to preserve the historic character of downtown. It's really important. You know, I get it, and I'm very convinced that we need to do that somehow. One of the things that we've been doing, actually at his request, is some research on the appearance of the buildings that were in that vacant area that exists on the corner of Superior and Porter, where the building, it actually used to be a hotel at one time. It was built as a hotel, part of that. So we've been doing a lot of research. Neely Kent, who's our office manager at EDC, has talked with the public library and with Frank Pasick and with some other people, and we've had a lot of different kinds of connections. Some other people have done some research for us too. We're providing them with a lot of pictures of what went before, and we're hoping to find some artifacts so that they can actually get their hands on it, get a good feeling for what things look like. So he also gets it, and he's very interested in doing as much as he can to make this really feel like it belongs in downtown Albion. So, with no further ado, it is really a pleasure for me to finally introduce to you and to the community Dr. Sam Shaheen from Saginaw, President of SSP Associates.
Thanks, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen of the council chambers, Mayor Domingo, City Manager Mitchell, and all of City Council, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I'm excited to be here because I've known Albion since 1974, when I came to summer camp at the college. So I came to summer camp every summer from 74 until I came to college here. I'm not going to tell you when because you're gonna know my age. But so I spent every summer, at least 3 weeks of the summer here, from the time I was a young child, and I witnessed many of the same things that happened in Albion over the last 40 years that occurred in Saginaw, my hometown. And I was struck by the similarities between the two communities. Albion and Saginaw have rich manufacturing backgrounds. They have very similar histories. They have similar demographic makeups. They have similar spirit. And I would say that had I come to Albion and seen that the spirit had broken, you wouldn't see me here today. But much like Saginaw, there's a fighter in the people of Albion. And if I see that and I see what this community accomplished with the Bohm Theater, and to see it restored to its grand presence as it was back at the date that it was built, it's apparent to me that the community is far from gone. And so it's with pleasure that we bring a lot of the experience that we've brought and used in other communities in the state of Michigan, namely, as Brett mentioned, Saginaw, which is where in 1999 we began. And my family's been in the development business since the 60s, but we really got into urban redevelopment in the late 90s. And I guess I'd like to say that the motivation to do that was that Saginaw had seen its better days, but yet there was a river that was running through the community. There were two big hospitals that employed several thousand people, but yet between those two hospitals it was like a ghost town, and no one would go. No one felt safe, and really there was no commerce. And the fact that we were able to go there and make a huge impact on a stretch of street in downtown Saginaw that now has spurned additional businesses and restaurants and new apartments that are market rate gives me a renewed sense of optimism for a town like Albion. Albion is still a great community with great people and some great infrastructure. We're fortunate in Albion to have a beautiful 4-year liberal arts college, and a lot of great things going on in manufacturing with the recent announcements of the new plants and adding people. And that combination gives me a lot of hope for what can be accomplished here in Albion. So, you know, why a hotel? Number one, because there should be a nice place to stay when you come to Albion. I shouldn't have to go to Marshall or Jackson, or if I can't, you know, there's a great bed and breakfast, but I usually can't get a room. So there should be a hotel. And the hotel will bring people. It'll bring people from Jackson. It'll bring people from Marshall. It'll bring, you know, I've met several of you over the last couple of years, and many people have told me that there's no place for the high school reunion to stay. There's no place for a family to have a wedding or have guests from out of town stay. And those things resonate. There's no place for the businesses to bring their customers to Albion so that they can see, you know, Castor Concepts or any of the other businesses that are in and about Albion. So it's an opportunity to bring people from outside to spend money in Albion. And so to the points that have been made, the brownfield project doesn't do anything to what's here today. There's no effect on the current tax base. What it does is it defers the benefit of the project, if you will, from a tax standpoint for the period of time that it takes to recapture that tax. But after that, you know, assuming that we're very successful and assuming that the hotel is very vibrant and continuing to operate here, those taxes will come to the community. They will impact the community, and they will make the community a better thing. And hopefully, because of the BOEM, because of a project like this, because of kids and stuff, and the other things that are going on in Superior, you know, all of a sudden more of the storefronts hopefully will have people in them, and that tax base will go up, and you know, that's hopefully what we will see as a renaissance for Superior Street. So I will take questions if there are any questions, but I'd like to thank all of you because I know this is a little bit new for the community, but it is something that's done across the state of Michigan, and I can assure you, if we don't do it in Albion, another town will want to do it. So.
Well, we would like to thank you for picking us and coming here, and we will do everything that we can to help you in every which way we can to get this thing moving, so.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any questions from council?
Just a
Yes,
comment.
Andy?
Yes.
You got a name yet?
No, not yet. Not yet.
The Black School.
Yes.
I want to thank you for choosing Albion also. I feel this is just greatly in line with what the rest of the state is trying to do. The Michigan Municipal League, My Place, Placemaking with the BOEM across the street. I mean, it's just a beautiful what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
My thanks also. I'm a lifetime resident of Albion, and there's a lot of people have been here, born here in Albion, and remember the good old days when there's a lot of activity and such, and this appears to be something that will bring some of that back, and that will really be enlighten the downtown area. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any further more? Okay, we're working this kind of in reverse, so I will now open up a public hearing for any questions on the Brownsfield plan. The public hearing is now open. If there are any comments from the audience, please state your name and your address, and take it short if we have a lot of people talking.
My name is Dick Lewin, and I live at 517 East Michigan Avenue, the bed and breakfast. And we have 4 rooms, and I don't think we're going to be competition for 72 rooms. And I don't think the 72 rooms are going to be competition for us. I think that there is a knitting that will happen. More people will be coming into town, and some of them will choose us in spite of the hotel. And that's cool. I cook a good breakfast. I'm sorry we haven't been able to get you in. But I'm here to support the brownstone whole concept. Great idea.
Dick.
I'm Mary Slater. I live at 517 East Michigan Avenue. I'm the other partner in the bed and breakfast. And I just want to offer my support of this project. And one thing I want to comment on is the size. Why don't we dare to dream big? Why don't we dare to dream that Albion can be the kind of place that people will fill up that hotel, that people will use that conference center, that restaurant, and that people will want to come to Albion because there's so much to see and do here, and even to move back and live here.
Thank you, Mary.
Frank Pasek, 900 South Eaton Street. I think we as a community can be thankful that an organization is willing to come in here and invest a lot of money in something that's not like a tire burning plan or you know what I'm saying, has been done in the past here. This is something that is more positive from a historical standpoint. The block which they're going to develop has some great history in it. This was a place where our Albion School Board got its start, back in Howard Hall, the building where the Foxy Nails, and it used to be the Free Eye Lawyer place there. That was a big meeting place in our community for years, in our early history. Of course, where the Moose was, the Moose building, that was where Reverend George Bernard had his gospel publishing company for 40 years. You can still get antique songbooks that he printed there. And of course, that was many years. The Albion Recorder was there. When people came to town, they wanted to come to the center of town. Instead of staying at the hotels that were along the railroad, if they wanted to get right downtown, they would come to the commercial hotel, which is where the Moose building was, and the Eslo block, which was the corner building. And they had a lot of rooms in it, and it was a place where people came to meet and to gather. And so it goes way back in Albion history to see it become a hotel site again. I mean, that's right in keeping with history. It's right in keeping with the area. And it's great to hear that they're going to keep the historical theme when they build this. I wish we could see the drawings tonight, but I think this is something that will help be a part of a building block for the revitalization of Albion, and who knows what's in the future. So I'm all for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Ronald Rice, 910 Irwin Avenue. I fully support this project. I think it's high time that things like this should happen to Albion. We have given up a lot, and it's time to get. I only have one concern, and I don't know how or what the spread is as far as the tax base. Recently, in this year, I was told, and I have a business 2 blocks south of downtown, and I was told that there was a $4 million project or a $4 million purchase, which raised my assessed valuation way out of control. It was lowered a little, not in line at all, but if this is the case, we're talking 2 million, 9 million, whatever the case may be, a lot of dollars have been flowing through here. My concern was how much will the city take advantage of this to reassess places and raise those assessments to where if we were to sell our business, which my business is an insurance agency, and my son and daughter-in-law are buying our agency from us, effective the first of the year. And in 3 years, they want to buy the building. Well, if the assessed valuation on that building goes skyrocketing, they're not going to be able to afford to buy the building. And I just would hate to see that happen. So that's my concern, but believe me, that concern doesn't hold a candle to what I'm happy to hear is going to happen to Albion.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
I would answer that question if I thought that it would do any good, but I'd be lying to you if I said that you won't be harmed by it, but.
I'm
Yes.
Amy DeShawn. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Albion Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. This hotel will add to my revenues at the Greater Albion Chamber as a visitors bureau, because every hotel room rented in Calhoun County has a 5% tax assessed on that room. Assuming that you have 72 rooms at $130 a night, 365 days a year, and in Calhoun County, 57% of the rooms in Calhoun County are rented on an every single night basis. This is going to bring in $1.9 million in revenue to that hotel. This was just a easy, quick computation on my part, and that will dramatically impact my ability as the Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau to advertise and promote our community. I encourage you to support this concept.
Thank you.
Wesley Dick, 700 East Michigan Avenue. We've been in Albion, my family and I, since 1968, and it was in the boom period when we came. When Corning Glass closed, the bus period began a long, slow, and continuing evolution in Albion. But one thing that was always like reassuring was Main Street was still intact. We still had those buildings, looked like something out of a Hollywood set, if only. And from my point of view, it was a terrible shame that we lost the two corner buildings on that block, the block that's in question. And when all of this came up in the newspaper recently, I was encouraged, but when it mentioned tearing down more of Superior Street, I had some qualms about it. So I guess I'm encouraged by what is said tonight about historic recreation. I would like to see an architectural imagination of that. One question I have is the fact that this is a historic district, does this come into play in any way in terms of incentives and in restrictions on how it can be altered or
No.
that
According to Elizabeth, no. I can have her explain that.
And so I just want to be sure that this will capture the spirit of Albion's Main Street and his historic aura. A related question, or just a question, was what do we expect this, why is this a brownfield in terms of what has been there that has contaminated it? You often think of brownfield as Brooks Foundry and McGraw-Edison. So I'm interested in what they expect to find or what they have found, and thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Schulteis, 101 Irwin Avenue. I will preface this by the fact that it's been 15 years since I worked for the State Historic Preservation Office, so things do change and memories fade. But the National Register districts are honorary. They do offer, if you're eligible for listing, the ability to get tax credits at the federal level for doing rehabilitation. It's actually one of the ways that we're funding the Bohm Theater with complying with the Secretary of Interior standards. But again, in general, it's an honorary thing. There's no money attached to it unless you're specifically trying to preserve a building. If you're a historic building, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a National Register district or not, if you want to use federal dollars, you have to go through something called environmental review at the State Historic Preservation Office. So they do an assessment of whether or not your project has a positive or a negative effect on a historic property, and they'll make recommendations. We actually went through this with Porter Square when I was at the Downtown Development Authority. I had some choice words with the SHPO's office because at the time, one of the buildings that we were looking to take down in that block was the old dry cleaners, lots of contamination, structurally extremely unsound, just really no way to develop it. At that time, the brownfield legislation, I don't think had even passed. I don't even think that those programs were available to get money to do something. But they let the community proceed with taking it down, and it didn't have any effect on the district. Obviously, if you lost 6 blocks in the downtown, they might reassess whether you still had a commercial historic district, but we still have a pretty solid stock, and actually the SHPO's office is going to be using the Bohm Theater as a case study for historic preservation. So I think they're aware of everything that's going on. They're fully aware of this project and behind it. They believe in us as a community through MEDC is one that will do everything we can to have the highest quality possible. In some respects, that quality is going to come through historic preservation and having something wonderful like the Bohm Theater. In other respects, new development can, is spectacular as well and can bring even more. I mean, you can't have the size of rooms and the bathrooms that you need in hotels in these old buildings. You really cannot meet fire code and safety for this kind of development in an old building. When we look at just what we had to do at the theater to bring in the water service, to get the sprinklers, to go through the asbestos abatement, I mean, that's why our project was so expensive, and it becomes cost prohibitive to do that in a building that, frankly can't be used. So I think it's amazing that they are going to be filling in these blocks and bringing back that historic look, because it's really sad to look at the 2 vacant lots out my office window. And certainly back at the time Porter Square was being developed, the old Canes building, as we called it. It was before the semi drove under it and it had to come down. I mean, there were plans for developing that, and we had drawings for trying to bring that back, and what they're doing and the care they're taking to, I think, give us that back times 1,000, I think, in what it will look like in appearance and what we'll bring to the downtown are great. But again, I think it's all about cooperation and collaboration, and as long as we work with the SHPO and we keep people informed and on board and value their input, but at the same time make the right decisions for our community, they're not going to be able to come in and do anything. I mean, they're always going to come back when it's a historic building and say, if you're doing anything other than restoring it, it's an adverse effect, because they have A, B, C, D guidelines. That just means it's an adverse effect on a historic property, not an adverse effect on your community. And I think that's what's most important, is we need more positive things. We had over 250 people at the Bohm this weekend for a concert. Wouldn't it have been great to have somewhere that we could have taken them across the street that could have actually accommodated that many people? You couldn't find a parking spot downtown. So I'm very excited about using your parking when people aren't at the hotel. You may be towing some Bohm visitors and staff away, but I think that that's going to be our biggest problem in the downtown moving forward, is not enough parking, because we're going to have lots of people.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Elizabeth, for doing such a fine job on the Bohm, which I'm sure enticed Dr. Shaheen for coming here with his development, and all of the people, the friends of the Bohm, that done such a wonderful job working with you.
Actually, I think it was a little silent competition. Dr. Shaheen invited Peggy and I up to see the beautiful Temple Theater in Saginaw that his family personally restored. And at the time, we were at the very beginning stages, and I was like, this is what I have to live up to, and his bathrooms were awesome, and I'm like, his mom did that. And, so I couldn't do marble, but, we did black granite. I said, our bathrooms are a lot smaller, but I was going to give him a run for his money, and I think we've been able to do that. But he kind of set the standard. I was like, oh, wow, this is the same time frame, and it's the same color scheme, and we've got something to live up to. So, I mean, he really does appreciate, and he's put his money where his mouth is, or his family has, when it comes to historic restoration, and a phenomenal facility, and their theater's a lot bigger. So I think we've done extremely well at complementing them, and I'm looking forward to these future partnerships.
Well, Thank you very much. Are there any more Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
A couple people have said something about drawings and stuff, and those will be forthcoming, but they're just not ready yet. They're still working on just exactly what this thing is going to look like in terms of where the rooms are going to be and where the restaurant will be and that sort of stuff. So I would anticipate that sometime in the next very, very few months, we're going to start seeing that sort of stuff. And of course, as you know, all of this has an extensive review through the zoning and the building inspector and all that kind of stuff. So everything is going to get examined with great detail, and the city will have lots of opportunity to weigh in on what this thing is going to look like.
Thank you. Any more comments?
Hi, I'm Cindy Stanzek, speaking as interim director of the Albion District Library. That is one of the jurisdictions whose tax capture will be captured because we do have, right now we're only receiving about $130 a year on those approximately 12 street addresses, which really says something about the value of those properties. And yes, we would continue to receive the $130 a year, thank you. We would hate to lose that. The fact that we might receive significantly more of that in 8 years, admittedly it's a delay, but without this development, there would be no value increase. So for our ship to rise, everybody else's has to rise with it. So we'll support it as much as possible, and we encourage you to hire as many Albion people as possible. Hopefully then they will further invest in our community and everything can go up, and then we'll have a wonderful little celebration in about 8 years when we can see a budget spike and we can actually maybe do some big projects at the library that we're excited on. But yes, please hire Albion, and maybe we can talk about temporary library cards for employees or something. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Speak up, forever hold your peace. I'm ready to slam the gavel and close the meeting. The public hearing is closed. Council, do you have any further? Yes, Cheryl.
I just wanted to make a really quick comment, and that is that, number one, I'm fully in support of this, but number two, one of the other things we have to keep in mind is that although we may be losing we may be losing what could be tax capture for those 8 years, or whatever it takes, we will be gaining the income tax from the people that will be employed there. And I think sometimes we forget that that is something that does happen when we have more people employed. So, thank you.
Okay. If there are no more, the presentation from the United Way, Amy Dishaw, please.
All of you know me as the president of and CEO of the Greater Albion Chamber of Commerce, but I am also the administrator of the Albion Homer United Way. And I would like to take a moment to introduce my board president, Rob Reed, and my board member, Maurice Barnes. Thank you for being here tonight. The Albion Homer United Way is in its final days of the campaign cycle for 2014-15. And Cheryl graciously invited me to come and make this presentation to you all about what the United Way does, and to make an announcement that we are still soliciting contributions towards the United Way until the end of December. And there seems to be some misunderstanding of what the United Way does. So I'm going to take a second to back up and inform you what we do. The Albion Homer United Way is not a service agency for social services in our community. We serve donors who are interested in making contributions to organizations who perform social services. What that means is that you can count on the United Way to investigate organizations that are performing work in the social services arena. We look at the composition of their boards, we look at their financials, We make sure that that organization is a going concern, that not, as soon as we give them the contribution, they're not going to shut the doors and walk away. We look at their organizational capacity to make sure that the organization is able to provide the service that they're promising to do in the community. If you promise to educate children who are needing to learn to read, and you don't have the credentials to teach children, you don't have the organizational capacity to do that function. The United Way has the ability to look at the organization as we grant fund and evaluate their capacity and their organizational structure so that when we give them a grant, we confidently feel as though they are capable of doing that task. We finally, at the end, ask organizations to send us back reports that let us know that they've accomplished what they said they were going to accomplish. Now, each of you can make a contribution to any nonprofit, and you can take a tax deduction if they're a 501c3. And you can go to GuideStar and you can evaluate past tax returns. But you cannot do the organizational evaluation that the United Way can do. And so we are encouraging you to consider giving a contribution to the Albion Homer United Way, because those funds stay in Albion and Homer. And know that your contribution is being smartly distributed back into the community on your behalf. And finally, one other difference between the United Way and the foundation is that your contributions to the foundation goes into a pot of money that earns interest, some of which can be turned back into the community as contributions. The Albion Homer United Way does not delay the contribution that you make in order to raise interest on it, in order to give it back into our community. The money that you give us gets turned back around into this community on a yearly basis. I have contribution forms in my office. You can make a designated pledge. What that means is that if you want to give your contribution to the Albion Interfaith Ministries, you can tell us, give it to Albion Interfaith Ministries. You can give an undesignated pledge, which allows us to evaluate the best place for your funds to be given. You can do that by cash, check, credit card, and be done with it and contribute it now to be taken off your income tax for 2014. Or you can make a pledge, and your employer will take that contribution out of your paychecks on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, depending upon what you wish, and you barely notice the difference. So I encourage each of you to make a contribution to the Albion Homer United Way. Cheryl hopefully has submitted the forms for the city staff for their consideration, and anyone who would like to make a contribution, I still have forms. You are still welcome to make a contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Drug forfeiture policy, use application, City Attorney Cullen Harkness.
Okay, I'm going to try to be as brief as possible because I'm sure no one in the audience wants to hear me talk tonight, but I'm going to try to give everybody an overview of the forfeiture that we've been doing and the forfeiture that we're going to start doing. For those of you that aren't familiar, essentially, and I think forfeiture's kind of gotten a bad name in recent years, is essentially
Colin, could you speak more into the microphone?
Pull it towards. Great.
I think that forfeiture's gotten a bad name and that people don't understand what it is. Essentially, what forfeiture does is it takes the property and proceeds from various violations, whether it's of the Controlled Substance Act or various other statutes in Michigan, and basically allows local municipalities and the police to take those assets and either utilize them or sell them to the benefit of combating future violations of the Criminal Code and the Controlled Substance Act. We've been doing controlled substance to date, and it is not a criminal action, it's a civil action. We prosecute all those types of cases in the circuit court. There's no jury trial, it's just before a judge. There's no Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Interestingly, it's the property that's the defendant, not the individual who owns the property. Usually, we have kind of a unique situation in Albion. Normally, forfeiture and property that's seized is done within the boundaries of the municipality, but we have some federal task force, and we've had a really good working relationship with the Calhoun County Prosecutor's Office, such that we're actually doing forfeiture outside of the city limits. This is a really big point of confusion as it relates to forfeiture. A lot of people think it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt with a criminal case. It's nowhere near that. It's a civil case. So all we have to show is by a preponderance of the evidence that as it relates to controlled substance, that the property was obtained or used in violation of the Controlled Substance Act. So 50.1% to 49.9%. Is it more likely than not? To seize the property, we don't even need to come close to that standard. We just need probable cause that the property was used to violate the Controlled Substance Act. So a good example is when we run a canine dog past a currency and it alerts on the currency. Also, when you have an individual that we suspect may have violated and is rolling around, for example, with $15,000 in cash with no explanation for where it came from. You'd be surprised how often that happens. We actually had some college students out on I-94 that had $200,000 in their possession and had no idea where it came from. We had no problem helping them figure out what they were going to do with it. Some other examples of probable cause, obviously the presence of controlled substances. As I said, a quantity of currency substantially greater than what someone would normally have, and currency found in close proximity to other things such as scales that have obviously been used to measure controlled substances, pipes that are used to smoke controlled substances, things of that nature. In terms of methods of seizure, 99.9% of all the seizures that we do are usually incident to an arrest. Usually we seize the property as we're arresting the individual. We can also seize the property if we've got an order from a court or if there's probable cause to believe that it was used to violate the Controlled Substance Act. Forfeiture actions are quasi-criminal in nature in that the defendants and the claimants can still challenge certain things, Fourth Amendment violations and things of that nature. So our officers take put a lot of detail into their investigations and really dot their I's and cross their T's to make sure that we can make our burden of proof. Things that we look for, again, controlled substances, drug paraphernalia, currency, canine alerts. One of the great things that we like to use, particularly in controlled substance forfeiture, is what's called discovery. And I can tell you in the litany of cases that we've done since we took over as the city attorney's office, we've used discovery to our advantage in that we can send interrogatories, which are questions that have to be answered under oath, admissions, which is essentially the same thing. We can ask for bank records. We can ask for tax returns. We can even depose the individuals if we feel it's necessary. So we are able to gather a lot of information, so there's really nothing hidden like you might find in a criminal case. There's nothing unknown. Now there's two types of forfeiture as it relates to controlled substance. There's administrative forfeiture and there's judicial forfeiture. With administrative forfeiture, the way the process starts is at the time that we seize the property, we give the defendants or the claimants a notice of intent to forfeit the property. Usually we serve that in person at the time of their arrest. Sometimes that's not feasible and we have to do it either by certified mail or posting, but 99.9% of the time we hand it to them in person. A lot of times they sign it, so there's no question that they've been served. In the event that criminal proceedings are still pending, we have to give the prosecuting agency notice that we're commencing proceedings. The claimants are required within 20 days of us giving notice of intent to forfeit to claim an interest in the property and post a bond of 10% of the value of the property. No less than $250, no more than $5,000. If they fail to post this bond, we administratively forfeit the property, which means Quite simply, we send them a letter saying your property is now our property, and that is done. There's no further steps that need to be taken as it relates to administrative forfeiture. This is only for property that's seized that has a value of less than $50,000. Judicial forfeiture happens when either the property has a value in excess of $50,000 or when a bond has been posted, in which case we file an action in the circuit court. I can say probably about half the forfeitures we do actually have gone through 37th Circuit Court over in Battle Creek. We've had very good results to date. Things that are subject to forfeiture: controlled substances, raw materials or equipment used to manufacture, deliver, or process. Those are things like scales, grow lights, things of those nature. Containers used for substances, conveyances used to facilitate a violation of the Controlled Substances Act. Quite simply, that's cars. You would be very surprised how many people drive around with baggies full of heroin and cocaine and analogs, which is prescription pills. Things that we're very careful to watch out for is what's called innocent owner, which is someone might be using a vehicle to violate the Controlled Substance Act, but maybe it's titled to another person. So we're very careful about that, and we investigate as to whether or not they're a constructive owner, which means maybe the car is titled in someone else's name, but the individual driving it's making the payments. They're making the insurance payments. They're the only one that drives the car. So we can usually combat that with that concept of constructive owner. We can take books and records, including computers and digital devices, anything of value exchanged for substances, so currency, virtually any form of personal property that might have been exchanged, any money or property in close proximity to anything that's listed in this that I've just gone over, any drug paraphernalia, and real property that they may be using to hide controlled substances or otherwise facilitate a violation of the Controlled Substance Act. In terms of time requirements, we do have a time requirement with controlled substance forfeiture. We have to initiate proceedings in the Third Circuit Court within 3 months of the seizure. The reason I say 3 months is that the Court of Appeals has said that 4 months is too long, so 3 months is my cutoff for the City of Albion. The seizure is what starts the clock running. Thus far, since our office took over, this has not been an issue. So as far as the controlled substance forfeiture goes, in a nutshell, we seize the property. We give them notice of intent to forfeit. The Public Safety Department forwards documents to my office for review to determine whether or not we can proceed. We wait to see if they post a bond. If they don't, we administratively forfeit the property. If they do, we proceed with judicial forfeiture. I can tell you that in terms of the cases that we've done with judicial forfeiture, every single one of them has either resulted in the complete forfeiture of the property or a settlement agreement whereby the city either recouped a percentage of the forfeited property or the currency therefrom. Something very interesting as it relates to controlled substance forfeiture is there does not need to be an underlying criminal case. They do not need to be charged with an offense to proceed with controlled substance forfeiture. And I can tell you about half the individuals that we forfeited property from did not have criminal charges as a result. The next type of forfeiture that I'm going to address is something that we're going to be starting in the near future is what's called omnibus forfeiture, which is the forfeiture of assets as a result of violations of other criminal offenses. Certain offenses that you're going to see, particularly in Albion, breaking and entering a building, uttering and publishing, robbery, home invasion, criminal sexual conduct, things of those nature. We can pursue forfeiture of personal property if the individual is charged with an offense that falls under the Omnibus Act. There's probably about 40 or 50 different crimes that fall into that category. I've only listed a few. But the property has to be either an instrumentality of the crime, proceed of the crime, or substitute proceed of the crime. An instrumentality is essentially, it has to contribute directly and material to the commission of the crime. So the example that I always like to use is in the example of what's called violation of a financial, or theft of a financial transaction device. When someone steals someone else's credit card and they go from point A to point B to point C using the credit card at different locations. Well, as they drive to each location, they're using their vehicle to facilitate a violation of that particular law. So as a result, we can seize their vehicle under this particular statute. We can pursue forfeiture of real property, again, if it falls under, if it's a qualifying offense and if the real property is an instrumentality or proceeds of the offense. Real property is not subject to administrative forfeiture. We always have to do judicial forfeiture on that. Again, there are some defenses to omnibus forfeiture, just like with controlled substance, if there's an innocent owner. However, the Michigan legislature recently adopted 2 new acts that did a couple of things. They expanded our ability to do omnibus forfeiture. This is Public Acts 332 and 333 of 2014, in that the innocent owner defense is not absolute, is that the individual cannot have what's called willful blindness. You basically can't play dumb. If there's evidence to indicate that you know what's going on, you're going to be deemed to know what's going on. In terms of seizing the personal property in the Omnibus Act, most of it is going to be incident to arrest, just like with controlled substance forfeiture. But we can also seize it pursuant to a search warrant, or if we believe it's proceeds or an instrumentality of the offense. The way that this starts is immediately after we seize the property, we give them a notice of intent, or excuse me, a notice of seizure that has to be given to them within 28 days after we seize the property. From that point, we're essentially playing a waiting game. We give them the notice by personal service. We can do it by certified mail. A warrant for the underlying offense that was on that list has to be issued within 28 days after we seize the property as well. If they're not charged with the underlying offense under this particular type of forfeiture, we have to return the property. Once the property is seized, we also have to give notice to the prosecuting official. From that point, it's a waiting game. We essentially wait to see if they're convicted of the underlying offense. Now, at any point between the seizure and the conviction, we can certainly enter into a settlement agreement and return the property in exchange for some kind of settlement sum, but following the conviction, we have to serve them with a notice of intent to commence proceedings within 28 days of their conviction. There is no bond requirement for omnibus forfeiture. If they fail to claim an interest in their property in that 28-day period, we can administratively forfeit the property. If they do claim an interest, we then have 28 days to initiate a proceeding in district court to forfeit the property. Again, forfeiture is quasi-criminal. It's a civil matter. It remains a preponderance of the evidence burden of proof, which is 50.1% to 49.9%. Discovery, again, is available, so we can, again, obtain any records that we need. In terms of disposing the property, the seizing agency, in this case Albion Public Safety, would dispose of it pursuant to the Omnibus Act, which means we have to, for example, with a car, if there's a note on the car, we have to pay off the note before we can sell the car and distribute the proceeds. As I indicated, if the property is not ordered forfeited, we have to return it within 7 days. So, in a nutshell, on omnibus forfeiture, property is seized from the defendant. We give them notice of intent to forfeit. They're charged with the underlying offense. We have to wait for conviction if there's no settlement. Upon conviction, we give them notice of intent to commence proceedings, and they either claim an interest or they don't, which means we either administratively forfeit the property or we proceed in district court. Any questions?
Yes, Garrett?
I'm not going to make this long. I just want to say thank you for that and thank the chief and the manager. A number of residents had asked me about that, and I know that there's been, for the past couple months, a lot of journalistic interest in that. And so I think it was helpful to let us know what forfeiture is and how we use it. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, Andy?
So my question is, it seems that we're now allowed to presume guilt instead of presuming innocent. That we can seize property before a conviction. And so my concern is that creates an opportunity that I'm not very comfortable with. That we presume the person is guilty, so we seize property, then they go to trial, and they're declared innocent for whatever reason, maybe because they're innocent. But now we've created an administrative mess, right? So we've seized cash that could be earning interest. We've seized cars. That now means that family members who are not part of the crime, but maybe it's the only car that they have, now they're inconvenienced because they don't have their mode of transportation. So that just worries me. And I know we didn't have anything to do with the writing of this law, but I just worry about the impact that that forfeiture could have on a family that may not be guilty of committing a crime. And so I'm just putting out there as a concern, right? We are assuming guilt. That's why we seize the property, without actually going through the due process of a court trial or a jury trial or whatever to determine whether they're guilty or not.
And I want to thank you for that, 'cause that's one of the concerns that's been expressed. I think there's been a number of articles in the New York Times and other in Michigan, because there's been legislation about it too. So I just wanted to bring that up so we knew what it was, and then to, just discuss it. 'Cause I mean, it does provide, revenue that the city does use, but I think that's something I wanted to bring up, so for future kind of discussion, so.
Well, and to address Councilman French's concerns, the statutes do provide avenues for people to have their property returned during the pendency of proceedings, sometimes with a lien from the city on them to prevent them from being disposed of in the event that, for example, with omnibus forfeiture, that they are convicted, and that way they can't run off and sell the property that otherwise would have been forfeited. As it relates to due process, both the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court for Michigan, as well as the federal courts, have deemed that the process that I've just described to the council in and of itself meets every due process requirement.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Citizens' comments. Persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to agenda items only and to no more than 5 minutes. Proper protocol and decorum is required. Are there any comments on the agenda this evening? Seeing none. Moving on to the consent calendar. We will approve all these at once. Approval for study session minutes for November 20th, November 24th, December 1st, December 2nd, and December 8th.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. They all pass. Items for individual discussion are boards and commission appointments. If you're in the audience, as I call your name, I'd appreciate if you would stand up. Betty Branch, the ZBA. Elfreda Drake, DDA Board. Nydia Wolf, DDA Board. Peggy Sint, DDA Board. Jennifer Schreier, DDA Board. Nora Jackson, DDA Board. George Strander, Planning Commission. Garrett Brown, Planning Commission. Dixie Grant, Library. I wasn't looking. Did everybody stand up?
Some did. Some did.
And Dwayne Ruff, you weren't here when I asked, are you on the ZB? Zoning, okay, ZB board. So, all of you, I want to thank you very much. That fills our boards. We will take this as all in one, as a roll call vote. All in favor?
Can we have discussion at all?
Well, nobody motioned it, did they? Didn't
So
have my
moved.
copy. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Do I have any questions?
I have some discussion. I would like to thank Garrett Brown, and I think it's Dixie Walker, for getting involved with the library and the planning.
Dixie Grant?
Well, Dixie Grant, I think her prior name was Walker, they told me at the library. I'm not sure. But anyway, as I was saying, I want to thank them for stepping up. I think it's fair that I've had 4 years, and I wholeheartedly accept their nominations for my current seats. Dixie has the experience, overwhelming education. She could step in right now and be the director, the board member president, and I'm totally happy for it. I feel Mr. Brown in the planning, although I feel less qualified because of my 4 years there, age cannot really be a factor, but I think that being young as he is, he might be able to attract other young people to come on to our city boards and our service organizations. However, I feel council should have access to all the applications for city boards prior to the nomination portion of the selection. Granted, the mayor by charter is in a legal position to make the nominations to council. However, some applicants have approached me stating they feel slighted by the process. These individuals have grown and lived in the Albion Housing Commission complex. They graduated from Albion Public Schools living in the housing complex, attended college while raising families in the complex, and worked at some point for the housing complex. The Albion Housing Complex is seen as transitional living, and I'm proud of these young women who tried to move forward. They've told me they've submitted an application for Albion Housing Commission boards, seats, and are systematically not nominated. I let them know that that's by charter the mayor's right. Although I feel some of the current members at the Housing Commission Board have from 4 to 16 plus years on the board, a legal point is, let's say we can't use age. However, a few are in poor health. I feel that these younger people who, and I can't use age, but these people who have grown up in there, as we call them, the projects, who are successful and truly want to serve, should be given an opportunity to be nominated. Again, I wholeheartedly accept being removed from the planning and the library board because I believe it's best for the interest of Albion that we move people in a transitional way. Transition is from the heart, and I think it'll make a difference. Thank you.
Any further? If not, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Reed. Yes. Brown.
Yes.
Wheaton.
Yes.
Kraus.
Yes.
French.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
And Mayor Domingo.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could have a point of personal privilege here. I just want to acknowledge Nora Jackson of Nora's and More. I have her on speed dial, and it's because of her that I have most of my hot meals in the evening because I work too late. And she has the best catfish and sweet potato pie in town, so I just
Amen. I would second that. I would second that.
Okay. Okay, approval of resolution 2014-12, approving a Brownsfield plan for the city of Albion.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Are there any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Wheaton.
Yes.
Kraus.
Yes.
French.
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
Reed. And Mayor Domingo.
Yes. Congratulations. C, approval of mechanical amusement devices for R&R.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Does anybody know who R&R is? Is that the railroad?
No, in fact.
So what?
I looked up the address that was presented.
700?
It doesn't exist. It's an empty lot. At least according to Google Maps, that's.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
The building is there. I mentioned maybe some months ago that there was a young entrepreneur who had came to Albion, and some of the property owners there had informed me that they wanted to use their storefronts for these entrepreneurs. John Tracy, if he's here, he's worked on it, and we've discussed it, and we've talked with, the barbershop has been there, what? I don't know how long. The barbershop closed with the Atkins. It's the Atkins building. She worked there now. Dunklin's owned it. It was a hair supply right on the corner. One of the Dunklin brothers owns it right now. His wife, Sheila, does the hair in one section. And they're looking to have a young entrepreneur open the barbershop and the adjacent building. I've been in the barbershop there that they fixed up and the a recreational room. I've talked with John, and John told me just had to get approved. And this is part of that Austin Avenue area that I'm hoping that we can reinvigorate, and I'm asking you all to support it.
So,
yeah.
Just to be clear, so which this is not the building?
Is this the Dunklin building?
The Dunklin building.
At the intersection of Albion and Austin?
Yeah, Albion and Austin.
Okay. Or is it the one at Albion and or Austin and?
No,
it's that one.
I thought it was the other side of the street, but yeah.
May John come up, Mayor?
Sure.
John Tracy, Code Enforcement. It is the building on the northwest corner of Albion and Austin.
That's what I
The
thought.
address is 700.
Okay, okay. So it's the Dunklin
By
building.
assessing.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
What are they putting in?
Put 2 pool tables and some games.
Putting in a couple pool tables and
Oh.
2
Video games.
other machines.
Okay. Okay. If there's no further questions,
It's a voice vote, you can.
voice vote, all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same? Okay. The request for approval, resolution 2014-14, budget amendments.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported, any questions?
No?
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Kraus,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed, Brown,
Yes.
Wheaton,
Yes.
and Mayor Domingo.
No. E, request for approval of resolution 2014-15 for the 2015 budget appropriations.
So move.
Support.
Moved and supported, any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember French,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed, Brown,
Yes.
Wheaton,
Yes.
Kraus,
Yes.
and Mayor Domingo.
No. F, discussion/approval of union contracts for ACA, POLC, POAM, and AFSCME.
So move.
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion.
I need some information,
So
don't we?
this is summary, maybe?
Oh, you had that given to you
Right.
here.
It's right here.
We did get another union approved this evening.
Yes.
Yep, right, that's what I
I
want.
believe we have the 4 unions, 2 ratifications. We're expecting a vote from the other 2 this week. The details have been identified in the memo before you. In general, it is the 1% increase for all employees, and the other specifics relative to all of the employees within those represented classes, including now giving them the flexibility to have their birthday off and the other things specific to those unions.
Good.
Are there any questions on what you're going to approve? As far as the contracts go, it's all written here in front of you, dollar figure wise, at least for the unions. This will be a contract from January 1st to December 31st of 2015, and the contracts will be opened again at that point. If there are no further discussions, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes,
Yes.
Reed, Brown,
Yes.
Wheaton,
Yes.
Kraus,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
and Mayor Domingo.
Yes. Future agenda items? Yes.
Discussion on city board applications.
Any others? Okay.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're gonna probably talk about it in our first meeting, but we probably should do like a kind of goal-setting session for the year sometime. I know last time I mean, not right in January, you know, but we probably need to think about that, because this is our last meeting, I think, this year. So,
I guess we could put update on
Mike. Your mic now.
Anything else?
And I say, if there's anyone who wants to give an end-of-the-year donation or Merry Christmas donation to Highland Park, there'll be forms in Cheryl's office where you can just fill it out and turn it in to her, and she'll take care of it.
All right.
Somebody doesn't understand what I'm talking about, Highland Park? Okay, Highland Park is the park down at the end of here, right across from the senior center. Right now, it's vacant of anything, and we're trying to get that park rejuvenated for children. And it once was a school there, and across the way were factories. The factories are all torn down now, the school is torn down, and the park was named after Mr. Holland, which was instrumental in getting the school and everything tore down because it was dilapidated. So therefore, we're trying to get that park all fixed up for children, and at the price of $250,000, we've been working with some companies and some things are beginning to come together. So we're saying if you'd like to give that park a donation at the end of the year or a Christmas present, just come down, pick out a form and pick up a form, fill it out and leave your money, and we'll be sure to recognize you when we have the opening. Thank you.
Okay, H, there's nobody missing, so we don't need to excuse any council people. Citizens' comments, persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to no more than 5 minutes. Proper decorum is required. Are there any citizens' comments this evening about anything? None? Yes.
If there's no citizen comments, I'd like to thank Cheryl and all of her department heads for a great job coming in with the budget that, we agreed upon. Thank you very much.
I would like to make one comment on boards and commissions. If people had a problem, why they weren't selected or anything else, they should have come to me. I have yet to have anybody come to me and tell me why they weren't picked or why they weren't selected. So if anybody has a problem with that, come to me and ask me. Thank you. If there is, yes.
One more.
Cheryl?
They're gone, but I wanted to publicly say that the amount of work that went into this brownfield development plan has been tremendous, and I wanted to thank Peggy publicly and everyone else that has worked on this, because this was definitely not an easy project to bring in. And hopefully, this is going to be the beginning again of a revitalization in Albion. And I'm very pleased that Dr. Shaheen picked Albion
Yes.
to put this money into.
I am as well.
Yes.
If there is no more, yes.
Cheryl, would you mind announcing the intern?
Oh, okay. I'm very pleased to announce that we are starting a partnership with the Albion College, and in particular, I forgot the name of the college for the public administration, but
Gerald R. Ford Institute.
yes, Gerald Ford. And that student will begin in January, the first student. We're trying to recruit some additional students as well so that we can increase our capacity to provide services and do some of the infrastructure work we need to do, and at the same time give them some very unique and marketable skills.
Thank you very much, Cheryl.
Good.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Collaboration always helps.
Yes.
Good thing. If there is no more, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Thank you all. All of you have wonderful holidays. Be safe, and we'll see you next year.
I still can't believe it.